There you are, boy, Uncle Vernon said, a nasty grin on his face. Platform 9, platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but they didn't seem to have built it yet, do they? Harry rolled his eyes. You're some kind of moron, you know that. And no, I wouldn't recommend trying anything in front of all these witnesses, Harry said casually as he watched his uncle's face begin to purple. He figured he was reasonably safe saying anything he wanted to him, seeing as how he wouldn't see him for a whole 9 months. Of course, they don't have the platforms be obvious. It's a train for wizard children with wizard items that would attract far too much attention. Then where is it, boy? Venom spat. You can just walk right through the portal. I know it looks like a brick wall, but I assure you it's not. How is it possible, you ask? Magic. In fact, you can come with me if you like and see for yourself, Harry suggested. Uncle Vernon looked like he was about to lunge at Harry, but Harry just nodded towards the local constable who was standing not 20 backed away. You'll pay for that, boy, he whispered menacingly, and then walked back to his car. As they drove away, Harry saw Dudley and Aunt Petunia laughing. Clearly his uncle had lied about the encounter. Now Harry was fully aware of the fact that antagonising his uncle was probably not the best plan, but he had stood up to people 100 times more intimidating than the likes of Vernon Dursley, and so he wasn't about to just cower, as he would have when he was really 11. Harry could basically write off any chance of improving relations with his uncle, but the rest of his family were a different story. He knew that his Aunt Petunia had once loved her sister, and was more scared of what Harry's presence would mean in terms of her family's safety, and jealous of that Lily had always been the favourite. More than 15 years of resentment would be hard to overcome, but Harry had always hated summer and the fact that he had nothing to do, so he may as well try that. Dudley was another avenue that Harry could pursue. Granted, at this point in time he was little more than a spoilt bully, but he did eventually come to accept Harry after the Dementor incident. Quite sure how he could speed up the reconciliation with Dudley, but he might be worth looking into. It would definitely make life at Private Drive more peaceful, that was sure. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry looked up abruptly as he heard Miss Weasley's voice. He quickly hurried after them. Now, what's the platform number? Molly asked. Harry wondered briefly how in the world she had managed to forget the platform number since she'd been going for God knows how many years. 9 3/4, Ginny popped up. Mom, can I go? Harry couldn't help but grin. While they were both currently way too young for him to be having any romantic thoughts about her, she was still a cute kid. When all the Hogwarts-bound Weasleys save Ron had gone through, Harry approached them. Excuse me, Harry said. Hello, dear. First time at Hogwarts. Ron's new too, Molly said kindly. Yes, Harry nodded before turning to Ron. Hi, my name's Harry Potter. He anticipated, the reaction was immediate. Ron's eyes immediately flew to his forehead, and Ginny started squealing. Well, at least this way she couldn't complain about not seeing him, though watching the love of his life act like a fangirl was somewhat irritating. Are you really, Ron asked? Are you really Ron? Harry asked. Of course I am, Ron said, looking confused. Why wouldn't I be? I could say the same to you, Harry replied, but I can't believe that you'd be Harry Potter. Harry shrugged. Well, I suppose someone has to be, right? He said casually, brushing the hair out of his eyes and revealing the most famous scar in the history of magic. So anyway, I was wondering if you could help me find the platform, he asked, turning back to Miss Weasley. Miss Weasley, whose eyes had filled with tears upon finding out who Harry was, probably because such a polite boy had had such a tragic life, and at such a young age too, nodded. Of course, dear. All you have to do is walk straight up, don't stop, and don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best do it at a run if you're nervous. Go on, go now before a run. Harry thanked her for her help and walked through the platform. Harry looked along, smiling a little at the sight of everyone so much younger than the last time he saw them. Suddenly one of the Weasley twins approached him. Want a hand? He asked. Unfortunately, Harry had no idea which one it was, as he had never been able to tell them apart to begin with, and George had lost his ear the summer after his 6th year, and then Fred had died, so he really never got an opportunity even after he had married into the family. Thanks, Harry replied. Hey, Fred, come here and help. Okay, now Harry was reasonably sure that Fred was the one who had approached him. After all, the twins never actually referred to themselves by their proper names, as apparently that was the lesser prankster. He again brushed his hair out of his eyes, this time more because of the effort of lifting his school trunks. He should probably put a charm on it to get it lighter, than because he had any great need to reveal himself to people who would hear him announce to everybody at his sorting soon enough. It was strange, though, to see George with 2 ears again, to see Fred alive again. His heart constricted briefly, and he tried to imagine how it'd be to see someone of the other people he'd lost, especially Severus, who was still in Azkaban. What's that? George asked. Now, what Harry had a good idea as to which one had first approached him. He knew that he'd be able to tell them apart. at least until they left his line of sight. Apparently Bill was the only one who had been constantly able to tell them apart, hence he was their favourite sibling, tight, and to ever be idolised by the Weasley twins. "Blimey," said Fred. "Are you?" "He is," George confirmed. Harry couldn't help but notice how surreal it was that the Weasley twins were, for once, not finishing each other's sentences. No matter how they know each other, that must be pretty difficult. We're the Lingmas, aren't you? "Well, I'm seriously confused, if that's what you mean," Harry told them. "Harry Potter," chorused the twins. "Nope," Harry said cheerfully. "You're not?" Fred asked, bemused. "No, I'm not." "Have you ever met him?" Harry asked. "Well, no, but—" George began. "Then what makes you think I'm him?" Harry demanded. "Well, you've got a scar," Fred offered. "So does Dumbledore. Are you going to accuse him of being Potter next?" "Of course not," George said, looking thoughtful. "Flitch, on the other hand, you're not Harry Potter," Fred asked skeptically. "And why do you have a lightning bolt on your forehead?" "Well, after the nasty little incident with the Dark Lord, my mother decided that lightning bolt scars were in and shot a cutting curse on me," Harry paused. "At least that's the official story. I think that it was before my father had the courage to be cut off for 3 months by telling her that maybe she should leave the cooking to the house elves." Fred and George just stared at him. "Hey, don't judge, and I'm Draco Malfoy, by the way." He peered at them suspiciously. "You are purebloods, right?" Wordlessly, Fred nodded. George found his voice first. "You're Draco Malfoy? You have a problem with that?" Harry crossed his arms. "No, but aren't your parents blonde?" he asked. "Your point being?" "No, my mother was not having a very public affair with Severus Snape." "How dare you even suggest that?" Harry shrieked. Fred held up his hands. "Calm down. He didn't mean to offend you." "Well, he did," Harry sniffed. "In fact, I'm going to write to Father right now." "Isn't he still at the platform?" George asked, perplexed. "Yes, he is, but actually talking to your relatives is for half-bloods." And with that, Harry stormed off, wondering how on earth he had managed to keep a straight face through this entire exchange. One thing he knew, though, was that he definitely would have the twins' respect after they realised he tricked them. "Hey, Mom, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train?" Harry heard Fred say. "Who?" Molly asked. "Draco Malfoy." "That's nothing. I met Harry Potter," Ginny told him, still sounding awestruck. "Meeting him wasn't the interesting part," George explained. "Then what was?" Ron asked. "Apparently his mum and Snape were having an affair, and he's the byproduct," Fred explained. "What?" Molly asked. "This is much better gossip than last year's Albus Dumbledore was madly in love with Gilbert Grindelwald. Honestly, you'd think Rita Skeeter would learn to stop making up such scandalous stories." Obviously, Dumbledore was struck speechless by the blatant lies and thus couldn't be bothered to deny it. "It's true, he practically admitted it," George confirmed. "I've got to go find Adorium," Miss Weasley muttered. "Be good, kids," and with that she hurried away. Ginny trailed along behind her and casting longing looks back at the express. "Everyone sitting here?" Ron asked, entering Harry's compartment hastily. "Nope, go ahead," Harry invited. "Hey, Ron, going down the... Why are you sitting with Malfoy?" "Malfoy?" Ron looked confused. "You mean him?" He gestured to Harry. Fred nodded. "But that's not Malfoy, that's Harry Potter," Ron explained. "What?" Fred asked. But you told us you were Draco Malfoy." Harry shrugged. "What can I say? Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy. Sometimes I get confused." "George, I think we've been pranked," George said. First year's allowed to do that?" Fred wondered. "Does that mean that what you said about Snape's not true either?" "It might be," Harry said nonchalantly. "Feel free to spread a rumour in any event." Both twins' eyes lit up at this and then ran off down the hall. Harry felt slightly guilty for doing this when he was planning on making a sincere effort to not make Draco Malfoy his arch-nemesis. Because honestly, if he really wanted one that badly, there was always Voldemort. Decided that since Draco had spent the same rumour about his mother and Snape, turnabout was fair play. "You're my hero," Ron blurted out. "Because of my facial disfigurement?" Harry asked. "No, because you pranked Fred and George," Ron explained. At Harry's incredulous look, he hastened to add, "But your scar's pretty cool too. Yeah, it really considerate of Voldemort to give me such a wicked-looking scar when he attempted to brutally murder me as an infant," Harry said dryly. Ron just stared at him, fascinated and a little horrified. "You really shouldn't say his name, you know." "You know, the more people tell me that, the less likely I am to actually listen to them," Harry remarked casually. Ron looked torn between the desire to impress upon Harry the importance of not saying Tom Riddle's silly little phenomenon and asked more about the night the two had met for the first time. Do you remember it? You do realise I was 15 months old at the time, right? Harry asked, raising an eyebrow. I know, Ron defended, although his tone of voice indicated that he really didn't seem to really and properly remembered the event, much less actually played some secret part in Voldemort's downfall. I just thought that you might remember because of the scar. Now it was Harry's turn to stare. You know, I'm starting to think that you people don't actually know anything about the way that scars work, he said, remembering how everyone had thought that his scar made him a lying psychopath 5th year. What do you mean, you people? Ron asked. You know, wizards, Harry explained. But you're a wizard, Ron pointed out. Yes, but I was raised by Muggles, Harry explained. What does that mean? Ron asked. Harry smiled at Ron's inability to comprehend why it would matter. He was so innocent back then. Muggles don't have magic, and as such are forced to be much more sensible. Oh, Ron paused and looked affectedly at Harry. And to answer your question, yes, a little. What do you remember? Ron asked eagerly. That was the annoying part about Ron being so innocent. He tended to have the track of a troll. He'd gotten much better at not asking such painful questions, such as that he remembered about the first time someone attempted to kill him after he'd started dating Hermione. Well, Harry said, trying to piece together all the flashes he'd seen over the years. I remember someone who I assumed is my father telling my mother to go and take me and go. Then there's laughing, someone who I assume is my mother begging Voldemort to spare my life. He tells her to stand aside and let him kill me. She says no and asks him to kill her instead. He does, and there's a lot of green light and my forehead felt like it was on fire, Harry explained. Now Ron looked horrified. I'm sorry? He really should have thought, but then again, he was only 11 and knowing Molly Weasley living the most sheltered life imaginable. Are ye all your family wizards? Harry asked, quickly changing the subject. Yes, I think so, said Ron. I think my mum's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. Harry froze. He couldn't believe he'd never realised that the first time around But to be fair, he was only a child at the time. Why not? Ron looked confused. What do you mean? Your accountant cousin, is he magical? No, Ron replied, still not getting it. Is that why you don't talk about him? Harry asked. Clearly Ron had never thought about why they pretended they didn't have a squib relation. Just like how the Dursleys like to pretend that they didn't have a wizard nephew. Like that, no wonder Voldemort's only real opposition came from the negligence group, who functionally more like Albus Dumbledore's personal cult in his quest to atone for helping Grindelwald all those years ago. Still, the fact that Ron had never realised that his lack of magic was the reason they ignored their cousin was to his credit. And so Harry supposed he couldn't really take his frustration with the sorry status of the wizard world, where everyone was prejudiced against everyone else on him. Not to mention that it would completely destroy any chance they'd have of being friends. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one, Hermione said, entering the compartment. Neville trailed behind her. No, but you could always summon it, Harry suggests. I know the spell. I don't know the spell for that. That she didn't know how to do a spell that they didn't teach for several more years. Here, I'll do it, Harry volunteered and took out his wand. Acto, Neville's toad. Nothing happened for a moment, and Hermione looked doubtful at him. Are you sure it's a real spell? Harry nodded. Oh, he was sure, all right. Well, it's not very good, is... But she was interrupted as Trevor fell through the door. Oh! Ron looked over at Harry, surprised. If you knew how to summon his toad, why didn't you do it the first time he was here? Because he wanted to see Hermione again and hopefully make a better first impression. I guess I didn't think of it, Harry lied. I've tried a few simple spells too, just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise, but I was so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the best school of witchcraft there is. Then isn't it convenient that it just so happens to be the one geographically closest to where we live? Harry muttered. Hermione gave him a look. I've learnt all our set books by heart, of course. I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you? I'm Ron Weasley, Ron finally managed to say after staring blankly at her for 3 whole minutes. Harry Potter, Harry told her. Are you really? Hermione asked curiously. What is it with people not having faith in that I know my own name? Harry asked Neville, who just shrugged, and Hermione. I didn't know that I was a wizard until I got my letter, because my relatives refused to acknowledge that magic exists, and Ron was telling me that there are plenty of muggle-borns around, so I'm sure you'll be fine. Besides, I doubt that anyone actually is bothered to memorize all of the textbooks, so I think ahead of everyone else. Really? Hermione picked up. Really, Harry confirmed. Although I did memorize our potions textbook, he admitted. Ron looked horrified at the thought of his potential best friend being a bookworm and scooted closer to Neville. That's just because I heard that our teachers hated my dad, and I don't want to give him a reason to hate me, Harry quickly added. Not, of course. Like Snape would need a reason, but at least he didn't embarrass him now that his first day surprise questions. Harry probably could have just looked up those specific questions, but then Snape might have got mad, asked him some more, not to mention that it had been years since his first class with Snape, and he honestly didn't even remember what the questions were, or how many of them there were. Oh, that's okay then, Ron said, relaxing. You're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts, you know, Hermione told him. Well, I wouldn't believe anything you read, Harry told her, a bit uncomfortable. Why not, Hermione asked. Because by this time tomorrow, the Daily Prophet and the Witch Weekly will have probably run a story on how Draco Malfoy is Narcissus Malfoy and Severus Snape's love child, Harry told her. I'm afraid I don't understand, Hermione frowned. Don't worry about it, Harry told her. You'll find out soon enough. I guess I should be getting up, Neville reluctantly following suit. Ron, being 11, didn't notice that they obviously wanted to stay, but Harry did, and his heart went out to the past and the future friends. Hey, why don't you guys stay a while? We've got way too much food. We need to get someone to help eat it. Hermione beamed and sat right back down again. Thanks, Harry, Neville said quietly. A short while later, Draco Malfoy entered the compartment. Neville Longbottom, he proclaimed proud. Yes, Neville asked, surprised. Not you, Draco told him. Him, he said, pointing at Harry. Sorry, Harry told him, but that's Neville. Oh, was I close? He asked hopefully. How could you be close? I'm either Longbottom or I'm not. Which, for the record, I'm not. Well, you could be related to him, Draco pointed out. Harry snorted. I probably am due to all the inbreeding. Draco chose to ignore that, partly because he wanted to find out who Harry was, more obsessing about it, and partly because it was true. Then, who are you? That's Harry Potter, Hermione said helpfully. Draco laughed. No, really, who is he? Harry simply lifted his bangs up. Whoa, you are Harry Potter, Draco said, sounding a little astonished. Yep, Harry said, vaguely recalling something from his first time around. Weren't people talking about that? Well, yes, Draco admitted, but they were also spouting that the most ridiculous story about me being Professor's love child. Really? Harry asked innocently. Wow, I guess people will believe anything. But Harry, Hermione looked puzzled. Didn't you already know that people will believe anything? Neville surprisingly cut her off, having figured out that Harry had started the rumour. Yeah, he did, but he's been a celebrity for years. So Ron sniggered, his 11-year-old maturely level finding the rumour about him hilarious. Fortunately, Draco misinterpreted Ron's amusement. Think my name's funny, do you? Or perhaps not so fortunately? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all about the Weasleys. Red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. Wow, that's awfully specific, Harry remarked. I take it that your fathers know each other, and are probably not on best terms? Draco nodded. You'd be right, Potter. You'd soon find out that the wizarding families are much better than others. You don't want to be making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. Harry groaned inwardly. It was like Malfoy was trying to become his enemy or something. Not, of course, that Harry could possibly consider an 11-year-old boy his enemy. How to best handle this? He couldn't shake Malfoy's hand, of course, but he would give him the wrong idea and everyone else in the compartment. But how could he not shake it and still get out of this pointless 7-year rivalry? Finally, he said, I'm not sure I could make that. Finally, he said, I'm sure you could, Draco. But the thing is, I'm still new to this whole magic is real thing, and so I'm not sure if I could really make an informed choice at the moment. You wouldn't want me picking Ron just because we bonded over candy and you thought I was Neville, do you? Draco considered. I guess not. And besides, I'd really like to at least make it to school before alienating everyone, Harry said demonically. So, maybe at some point I'll decide you up on your offer of help. Maybe not. But in the meantime, I still need to figure out which of you is right. Bull, he knew exactly who was right. and who he would immediately choose if even Malfoy or Ron forced his hand. Pretty reasonably thing for someone who barely knew either of them to say. All right, Draco agreed reluctantly, but you'll soon see that I'm right, and with that he left, the bridge abundant.